that was very, very fair. It was like a fair agreement. I think it was a situation like this where both sides really felt like, okay, we both could have done a little bit better, but I think it's a fair result, the agreement that we have. But that wasn't the case with Motorola, with other companies, right? They maybe they were having to sell at lower profits, right? They weren't getting as much money. Well, I'll tell you what happened. There was a situation where there was this explosion, right? And there was a huge fire. And 3 or 4 of the main buildings where they were making these chips got damaged severely. So what do you think happened to the number of chips that they could produce per month? Did it go down? Did it go up?
Decrease.
It decreased dramatically, right? Like it went down 75%. So now think about it, right? You're creating where before in an hour you would make 4, you're creating 1, right? So, but the problem is you have all these cell phone companies, right, that depend on you. Without your chips, they can't make their cell phones, right? Who do you think that one that they could make, right? Who do you think they chose to keep supplying? Who do you think they had a choice, right? They said, I can give this to Motorola. Right. But what I'm saying is that they have agreements, right? Okay, so I'll draw this out for you guys, so it's a little easy to understand, right?
Based on agreements.
Well, here's the thing, right? This is let's call them SC, semiconductors, right? They're just making semiconductors. They have agreements with Nokia, right? They have agreements with Motorola, and maybe Samsung, right? I'm just giving 3 examples, right? So a fire breaks out, right? And their supply decreases a lot, right? Because they need to repair the plants. What are they going to do, right? So now they have to choose, even though we have agreements with all of these guys, we can only give business to one of them. We can only keep supplying. We only have enough chips to give to one of them, right? I mean, we could break it up. We could say, okay, we can just give everyone a little bit more. But who do you think they gave the most to? Remember what I told you in the beginning? They had an agreement with one of these cell phone manufacturers that was a very fair agreement. Nokia, right? That's what they did. They did not interrupt. Nokia needed like, let's say $100 million, right? Worth of chips, right? Because they felt like they had the most fair agreement with them. Maybe Motorola and Samsung negotiated with them so hard, right, that they said, okay, we only make maybe 10% profit from Samsung. Maybe we make 12% profit from Motorola, right? But doing business with Nokia, we actually make 20% profit, right? So because of that relationship, because they both felt like this is a fair agreement, they concentrated on giving it to Nokia. So what do you think happened in the end to the world, right? Suddenly there was a huge shortage of Motorola phones and Samsung-based phones, but Nokia was fine. Nokia's sales tripled, right? So this is an example of why it's important to think about negotiations. Don't always think about when you really want to do a collaborative negotiation, right? You also have to understand the other side and what they're trying to achieve. What are their goals? That's also something that's really, really important to try to understand. So I want you guys to think about this, because even when I was younger and I was first studying negotiations, right, I used to think, okay, I have a goal. That's to get this jacket for $75. I'm not paying $135 for this. And I'm going to kill people until I get there. But then you realize that that is a situation that might work like once or twice. But once again, over the long term, you're putting yourself in a bad situation. It's always important to be fair and honest. Even in the world of business, at the end of the day, the good guys, at the very end, the good guys do end up winning. Okay? So now let's talk about negotiating techniques. So, we've talked about negotiating, the types of negotiations, right? We've gone over competitive, avoidance, right? We've got compromise and collaboration, right? Which is really the 4th step. So there's a few terms in negotiations, right? The first is MDO. MDO means most desired outcome. Okay? Most desired outcome. Most means like the most, the highest, right? Desired is what you want. And outcome is result. These are all words that you guys should know, right? This is what is the best case scenario, right? We can also call this best case scenario. A scenario is like a situation, right? So maybe for buying this jacket, our MBO, right, is $75. We don't want to spend more than this, right? This is our most desired outcome. We might not get to this point, but we want to be close to this, right? We don't want to pay too much more than this. This is the absolute best situation for us, right? So this is important to remember, right? So MBO is the first one. But then there's an opposite of the MBO, right? The opposite is the LAA. And this is the least acceptable arrangement, or yeah, arrangement is. So the least means the lowest. Acceptable is simply something that you can agree with. And arrangement, once again, is situation, right? So the MDO in this situation for this jacket is that we only want to pay $75 for it. But the least acceptable arrangement, or the LAA, might be we don't want to pay more than $100. Like if it's $100, we walk away. If we can't come to an agreement between $75 and $100, right? So maybe it's just 100. If we cannot come to an agreement between 75 and 100, right? This is our absolute like worst. We're not spending any more than this. I'm willing to spend 82, 85, 90. 100 would be like kind of bad, but it's like okay, fine. Like this is at least like something we can accept, because acceptable is still, this is still something we can accept, paying like $100 for it, right? And then there's like one final one. Okay, this one's a little long, but this one's really, really important. This is the Batman. Okay, this is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Okay? So look at the words over here. It's kind of interesting. Best alternative. An alternative is a completely different choice, right? To a negotiated, right? A negotiated agreement is a deal. If you can't come to an agreement, what is our overall alternative? So in this case, right, we've identified that our MDO, our most desired outcome, is paying $75 for this jacket. Our least acceptable agreement, or our least acceptable arrangement, is paying $100 for it. So what do you think our best alternative to a negotiated agreement is? Once again, is that the only jacket in the world? No, right? Exactly. So our alternative, this is the most important word, alternative. Our alternative is to buy a different jacket. If we can't come to an agreement between $75 and $100, I'm going to a different store. And I'm going to Takashimaya. You know, I'm not going to buy it Uniqlo. I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy this for like more than $100. Right? That is our alternative, right? So let's maybe draw this out. So let's draw this out in sort of like a little graph, right? So this is the buyer, right? Right? So your MDO, which is $75, is over here, right? is really a range, right? And your least acceptable arrangement is $100. So your goal, the price that you want to pay, is between $75 and $100, right? So your goal is in between your MDO and your LAA. And your BATNA is over here. This is really simple, right? But it's powerful. When you think about negotiations in this way, your goal is, I want to spend in between here. The closer I get to here, the better. But anything in between here is perfectly acceptable. The absolute worst case scenario is paying $100. The best case scenario is paying $75, right?
How can we say the range between MDO and just goal?
Yeah, so the range between your MDO and your LAA is your goal, to be somewhere inside of that range. That's what you're trying to get at, right? Now, let's take a look at it from the seller's perspective, the store, right? The seller right? Their MDO, like if you want to look at it as the same graph, right? And their LAA. So the MDO is, of course, to sell it at the tag price, $135. The least acceptable arrangement might be to sell it at like 115, right? So their goal is really, and in this situation, their goal is a lot closer to here. Like the stores, they really don't want to bargain, especially if it's a big department store. You know, if you're buying one thing, you can't really bargain, right? It's kind of tough, right? But look at it this way. This is problematic, isn't it? Because if you're buying one item, right? Even if you bargain with them a lot and be, listen, I really like this, but I'm going to go to another store. If you try to make it competitive, right? Because when you're shopping, anytime you're shopping for anything, it's competitive, right? Why is it competitive? Why is shopping for most items, when you go out shopping for clothes or whatever electronics, why is it competitive? And so why is it competitive? Think about it. What do you have? What do you have when you're shopping for clothes, right? What do you have a lot of?
Price.
Not price, but you have a lot of choices, right? Exactly. You have a lot. You can buy. There's hundreds of coats, right? So that's why you can be competitive. You have power because there's so many other ones, right? So if you try to tell them that, listen, I really, really want to I really like this, but I'm going to go buy it from your competitor if you don't give it to me. The most you might be able to push them to 122, 120, maybe 115. But this is a problem, isn't it? I mean, for the seller, their BATNA, what is it? So our BATNA is that we're going to go to Takashimaya. We're not going to go to Uniqlo, right? But what is the seller's BATNA? It's pretty simple, right? It's the exact opposite situation. Pedro, what's the seller's BATNA? What's the seller's alternative?
They can go to the other one.
No, that's the buyer's.
The buyer?
So the buyer's saying that I'm going to buy it from another store, right? I'm going
to sell it to someone else.
Exactly, right? The seller's just like, fine, don't buy it, right? If you don't buy it, then he's going to buy it at this price, right? The seller's going to say, I don't have to sell it to you for a discount. There's 10 people waiting behind you, right? So this situation is kind of problematic, right? Because ideally, if there's some overlap, right, then it's easy. It makes sense mathematically, right? You guys can come to an arrangement that's between both of your LAAs, right? Your worst case scenario, right? If his LAA was like 90, then it would be pretty easy. You guys at one point would be like, okay, fine, right? So in a situation like this, right, what can you do? Don't worry about the BATNA for now. If you're trying to buy this for